When people think of psychosis, they commonly think of symptoms like hallucinations or paranoia, in which a person may be talking to themselves because they're hearing voices that aren't there, or having an irrational fear that they are being stalked or spied on. And while these are absolutely common symptoms, they are by far not the only ones. There are actually three kinds of symptoms of psychosis. There are positive symptoms, negative symptoms, and cognitive symptoms. So what are these symptoms? Well, let's get into it. So to start, let's talk about positive symptoms. Positive symptoms are not good symptoms. They're not positive in the sense that they are good things that could happen. They are positive in the sense that these symptoms add onto a person's reality. So these are additions to the reality they are already experiencing. And this is the kind that people typically think of, the hallucinations and delusions. Hallucinations are essentially having sensations through your five senses that are not actually happening. So they are your five senses engaged with perceptions that aren't true. So you may perceive that you are hearing things. For me, a lot of my auditory hallucinations, which are the things that I hear, are car engines revving even when I'm inside a room, or hearing doorbells and then checking the door to find out no one's there. I often hear people talking around me, multiple people at once, but I don't get a lot of people talking to me. That's probably one that I wouldn't be able to tell was happening. So even if I have had that experience, I can't tell you. If I had, I wouldn't know. It's just so realistic that I cannot tell, even outside of the psychosis. So those are just auditory hallucinations, the things that you would hear. There are also olfactory hallucinations, which would be smelling things. So for me, I've smelled sulfur where there was no sulfurous smell. And I've had tactile hallucinations, which are hallucinations in which you would perceive that you are feeling things. So I would feel like a weight on my shoulders, like someone had draped a blanket over my shoulders. There are visual hallucinations in which I have seen things like figures, people, colors even, and visual patterns. So when you, for instance, have an acid trip, you might see like tracers, right? Which are just like patterns following your line of vision. And I would have that on top of the very, very, very realistic people that I was seeing, like an evil nun or my dad. I don't know that like taste would be a hallucination, but I have heard people say that they've tasted things. I just couldn't find in my studying what the name would be for that. But for some people, you can absolutely have tastes of like things that are sour or bitter. So while hallucinations are having a false sense of reality, there are delusions, which are a false belief of reality. And these are considered fixed, false beliefs that cannot be proven, or rather cannot be changed even when proven. So the fixed part of the belief is that it will not change, like it's not going anywhere. And if you were to say, well, here's some proof, here's some evidence that that's not real, that would not change the delusion. It would still be just as realistic, just as strong. I will give you an example. For instance, I used to think that I was pregnant with Satan's baby. And even if someone told me there's no way you're pregnant, I wouldn't believe them. I went so far as to buy a pregnancy test and take the pregnancy test. And when it came back negative, that still didn't change my belief. I instead morphed the belief into thinking, well, of course Satan's child wouldn't appear on a pregnancy test. That's just like Satan to do that. Some other false beliefs could be religious beliefs, like religious delusions of thinking that you are, for instance, Jesus. That's a common one. Thinking that you are the Virgin Mary, thinking that you're possessed and you need an exorcism because you're overtaken by demons. Political delusions, like having delusions that you are a candidate in the election or you are the final say in an election. There are actually several types of like classifications of delusions. Persecutory delusions is the first that I will tell you about, and persecutory delusions are having a false belief that you are going to be harmed, that something or someone is out to harm you. There is a perceived threat that you are in danger, where honestly there is none. For me, I would believe that my apartment was bugged, that I was being spied on, that I was going to be abducted by the CIA, stuff like that. So persecutory delusions are a very, very, very extreme form of paranoia. Grandiose delusions are the second, and grandiose delusions are believing that you are some heightened, amazing person, that you have special abilities or special powers, that you are all important and you are chosen. You are just like an evolved being. So I would think that I was a god. I would think that I could manipulate and control weather. So I was responsible for when it rained. I thought that, I was chosen in the sense that I would be the savior of the world in some way, things like that. The third is religious delusions. Like I said, religious delusions being any delusion related to religion. So you could be a person who has no religious background, who has no belief system, no involvement in any religion, and still have religious delusions. Or you could be a person who is already religious and your beliefs are incredibly heightened. Fourth is somatic delusions, and these would be delusions that something is wrong with your body. You have some kind of an illness or tumor, cancer. You may be, missing a limb. You may have some terminal disease, things like that. Fifth is referential delusions, in which seemingly ordinary things would have a significant impact on you, and you would find hidden meaning and messages in things. Like if I were to watch a commercial, I would think that there was some coded message coming back to me telling me what to do, and I would find meaning in things that were very loosely associated. Like if I turned on a lamp and it cast a shadow on a chair, I'd think that the chair was like a throne to sit on, things like that. They'd have no connection, no actual meaning, but I would find meaning in them. And sixth is erotomanic hallucinations, which are hallucinations that someone adores you and they're in love with you and they have great meaning to you. They want to be with you. And usually these are not people in a person's actual life. They'll be like celebrities. They could be like the president or Lady Gaga, people they've never met, that they will likely never meet, people who don't even know who they are, but they will believe that they want to reach out to them, they love them, they want to be with them. So those are the positive symptoms of psychosis. Now, the negative symptoms, again, are not negative in the sense that they're bad, that they have like a bad quality to them. They are experiences that are subtracted from your reality. So they are essentially the loss of being able to do things that you would normally do. I'll mention 5 negative symptoms, although there are certainly more than that. But just to start, there's avolition, which is an inability to be motivated to do anything, losing the drive to act. And this could look like, having poor hygiene because you don't have the motivation to take a shower, not eating because you can't bring yourself to make food or eat even like a snack, not getting out of bed because you just have no compulsion in you to actually do things. You are just kind of stuck in yourself. A lot of these symptoms feel like being stuck in yourself. The second is anhedonia, which is a lack of ability to feel pleasure. So this can be a lot like apathy, having disinterest in things you normally love. If you had any hobbies, say quilting or fishing, you would not feel compelled at all to engage in them because they don't bring you pleasure anymore. They don't satisfy you. You get nothing out of them. You have no feelings of reward. This can go so far as to affect a person's sex drive. They may have a lack of sexual drive because they are not interested. They have no pleasure in having sex. The third is asociality, which is having a lack of interest in being social. So closing yourself off from your loved ones, not wanting to be around people, dropping out of your, hobbies, your engagement with other people because you want to close in on yourself. You will kind of just withdraw from the world. You will cut yourself off from any social interactions you might have had. You might start missing work. You might start missing school because you don't want to be around anyone. The fourth is blunted affect. And having a blunted affect or a flat affect is the loss of emotion, having no ability to express emotion. So having a very flat face and speaking very monotone and not expressing emotion in any way, just kind of going into this robotic state where you don't really engage emotionally. And finally, the fifth is alosia, also called poverty of speech. And this is a diminished ability to speak or communicate through language. It could also be a complete lack of ability to communicate. And this can look a lot like having long pauses between words when you say sentences. So it could be harder to talk. It could also be giving very limited answers to questions. So if someone said, "Hey, how's it going? Tell me about your day," you would say, "Fine, it was good." No elaboration. Sometimes, for me at least, it would be only being able to answer yes or no questions. If I was asked anything that involved abstract thought, I couldn't give an answer. If I was asked anything, I couldn't give an answer, like, "Where do you want to go to eat?" Nothing. But if they said, "Do you want to go out to eat?" I could at the very least say yes. So I had the capacity to give yes or no answers, and that was it. So some people can't even speak at all. This could take days or months even to resolve. For me, it took about 4 months to start talking again. And it's kind of linked with having an inability to think, having an absence of thought, so thought blocking, and not being able to give answers because you have no thoughts there. Like I said, there are actually more of these symptoms, the negative symptoms. For instance, catatonia, which is an inability to move, as well as many, many, many other things, which could be a video all on its own. And negative symptoms are the first symptoms to appear in a psychotic episode in the initial phase, the prodromal phase, going into an acute psychotic break. So these are the symptoms to look for. They can look a lot like depression, but if you know what you're looking for, you can get intervention through first episode treatment centers, which are an amazing resource I could talk about at length. And finally, the last type of symptom of psychosis is cognitive symptoms. And cognitive symptoms, like negative symptoms, are a diminished ability to use that brain function. So cognitive functions look a lot like attention, memory, reading comprehension, processing thoughts, and there are so many ways that you can have a loss of cognitive symptoms or an impairment of cognitive symptoms. For me, this is a lasting effect because I do have brain damage from psychosis, which I could, again, talk about at length. I have so many ideas for videos, and brain damage certainly can be talked about for an entire video, let me tell you. But the brain damage I've had affects my cognitive abilities, so the cognitive symptoms that were impaired in psychosis are still impaired with me today. The cognitive symptom I struggle with the most is my memory. I have short-term memory loss as a result of psychosis. And for me, this means that I forget things within minutes. So I could, for instance, the other day I said that I would take my keys from the bedroom to the kitchen where I keep them on a little hanger. And I immediately forgot before I even left the room. Like, I said the sentence, I turned to like pick out a sweatshirt or something, and in going from that action to that action, wiped from my mind, and I didn't ever remember it. I never recalled that, and it had to be reminded to me that I was going to do that. So I am absolutely the kind of person who will leave a room and forget why they went into that room. Or I will be the kind of person who, if I'm having a conversation, could say something or ask a question, and after someone's given a response, I will have immediately forgotten what I was talking about or why they went into that subject, because I don't remember going into a different subject. I don't even remember prompting the subject. I often forget things entirely and they have to be retold to me. And I kind of find that amusing because I'm used to it enough now that I can make light of it. So when I hear about funny things that I did that I don't remember from like 2 days ago, I can laugh about it because to me, it's like hearing a story for the first time. I will never, ever remember it. So a lot of things that I've done have to be told back to me, or else I just would never remember. Reading comprehension is also a struggle for me because I used to read a lot and I would read every day. I could read a book in a day, and I have a diminished ability to read now. So it takes me a lot longer to read. It takes me a lot longer to finish a book because I kind of have to go slowly through the page to understand what I'm reading. So every sentence, or not every sentence, but rather every paragraph or a couple of paragraphs, I kind of have to digest. Like I can't understand what I'm reading, and it takes some effort. It didn't used to take any effort at all, and I could envision a little world, and now I'm seeing words, trying to draw meaning from them, trying to put them together to make sense of them, and it's very, very hard. My attention span is also completely shot, and so this really frustrates a lot of people because if I'm in a conversation, I could pay attention for a small amount of time and then not even realize that I've lost my attention until a few minutes later when I realize, oh my God, what is going on? I'm not even sure what we're talking about, and I won't remember the last thing that was said. I won't remember when exactly I lost my attention. So in conversations, I'm constantly going in and out and in and out, and a lot of people take that to be I'm ignoring them, I'm not interested in the conversation, I'm not trying to pay attention. I really am, but I just can't. I have this mind that sort of slips away without me even noticing it, and I lose attention very, very easily. And the last one I'll tell you about, I'm just going to lump a few in together because they're all kind of related, and that is thought processing. I have a very hard time processing thoughts. This can look like logic and reasoning. Like if I were to have, a problem that needed a solution, I have a very hard time logically working out the steps to do that or what the solution would be. I can't reason in my mind, what would be the right avenue to go down to meet that solution. Logic and reasoning are very hard. Processing in the sense of learning new things is very hard because when I'm presented with something that I don't know, it's like overcoming a mountain, trying to understand what I'm faced with, trying to, like, for instance, being given directions to do something that I'm unfamiliar with. It's very, very challenging. Math, so hard. And it already was hard for me. And now I can't do very basic math. It's very difficult. Things that involve any kind of thinking, like in the forefront of your mind, not just like internalizing and processing in the back of your mind, like processing through trauma and memories. That's an entirely different zone that I work on in therapy. But the forefront, the logical stuff, the interactions I have in the daily world are more difficult because that takes an activation that I don't have. Having conversations with people, processing what they're saying to me and not understanding what they're saying to me. A lot of times if someone says something to me, it's like hearing foreign language, and I either need to ask them to rephrase what they've said because I don't understand, or I'll just sort of like stare blankly at them until my mind catches up and I understand. But the first time around when people say things to me, especially if they speak fast, I don't understand what they're saying. So those are the 3 types of psychotic symptoms: the positive, negative, and cognitive symptoms. These are all very, very complex, and they can intertwine in just amazing ways. The brain is so fascinating, and what it can do, oh my God. So again, people tend to think of the positive symptoms, but there's so much more to psychosis. It is such a, like I said, complex disease. And it is my pleasure to learn as much as I can about it to share with you, because I'm learning more about myself all the time. And I hope in sharing this, I've helped you learn something too.